how to manage contrast and color in a scene that may be less than ideal for lighting. In this case, it's a self-portrait I took while out on a desert playa. And if we look at what the shot really looked like, there's the default. I'm quite dark. Black coat is just above black. It's just not looking so hot. So how do we get from that to this? And how do we do it without corrupting the color in a way that we don't like? Let's go through that. Okay, so I'm going to start with what I have here to remind myself, and I'll go through each one as we go. First of all, as usual, you want to pick the camera profile. I like Astia because it has a nice combination of color and contrast. It's not always the best choice. You might like Adobe Portrait, which will give you a lot more mellow look. But when you pick one of these, it's going to affect all your other choices. So you kind of want to pick one and stick with it before you make other decisions. So I'm going to go back to the Astia. I want it a little warmer, more natural, lively look. Next thing is you pick color temperature. The default was 5,000. If we pick as shot, it's set. You'll see I look kind of bluish because 5,000 would be a kind of a warm light, and I've warmed it up to 5350. Here, we'll also notice that the default tint was 15. That means it's going to be green because it's 15 points magenta, and I went to 22, which is 8 more points magenta, which takes the green out. The green is not so evident in me as in the background with the blue here. So that's that. Now, as far as exposure, the camera was reading off that sky, so it metered something like that. And that's obviously way too dark for me, so that's why we pushed it with exposure at +1. The highlights were kind of out of control. If we zero that, you'll see it's very bright, and then we lost all that sort of morning earth shadow glow stuff going on. So I pulled those completely down, which restores some subtlety to the distance. We've got a kind of a yellowish here and blue on top. So the highlights have now been pulled down. The shadows I've boosted. Instead of 0, I brought those up, which opens up the face and the jacket. The whites, the 20 is kind of just gives it a little pop. 40 would pop it more. Maybe it's a good thing here. I'm not sure. But let's leave it at 20 for now. Blacks I don't really usually mess with unless there's a lot of other stuff going on. As far as the optics panel here, in this case, I'm in the center. I don't really want to correct distortion because there's not much of it going on me. And in this case, I definitely do not want to correct vignetting because if I do that, it's going to brighten up the corners. And in this case, I kind of like the slightly darkened corners because it draws attention to the subject of the portrait, in this case me. So I'm going to leave the vignetting control not on but off. Now in looking at this, I'm kind of realizing that maybe I should be a little brighter, but you got to be careful here because depending on your screen calibration and things like that, an adjustment of 1/10 of a stop is noticeably different than 1 stop, 1.0, 1.1. And it looks too bright and kind of washed out. So I'm sticking with 1 here, but you're going to want to calibrate your screen and get a sense of this before you choose the push. So I'll stick with 1 here. Now, I don't often shoot at f11. You can see up here it's f11 on the aperture because it really stomps hard on fine detail. We'll look at my face here, and you can see it's sharp, but I wouldn't call it particularly sharp. My default sharpening would be lower, and then things really start to look softer. So what I've done here is, because it's f11, I've increased the sharpening from 45 to 55 and from 0.7 to 0.9. That is what I call diffraction mitigating sharpening. And it somewhat counteracts the diffraction, not really fully at f11. I was also trying to figure out how to get my face in focus here. I actually took this shot about 5 times because the camera is too dumb to use autofocus at the time of exposure, so no way to say that. So I had to kind of like take it and then see if I was in focus. So that's why I had to use F11. Anyway, you'll want to increase this sharpening from 45 to 55 and 0.9 instead of 0.7 at F11 or something like that, maybe even 60. As far as noise reduction, I don't use this old style noise reduction anymore. And instead, in this case, the right thing to do is to go in here and say enhance, and it's taking a moment to load the data. Okay, and then it will give you a preview. I pretty much ignore this. I just say denoise 10 points, enhance raw details here, and go. I'm not going to do this right now, but that's actually the file you'll want to convert. But that's going to take half a minute, so we'll skip that. So assuming I've converted and we're working on the enhanced file now, all these settings we've done would apply. And I like to apply those to the unenhanced raw file, because enhanced files are so large that I typically make all these changes, then enhance, then convert the enhanced one, then throw away the enhanced one. It's just too big. It's like quadruple the size of the original, and I do not want to store that. In this case, down under effects, I always add clarity at 10. It makes a tiny bit of difference. Dehaze you can mess with, but notice if I put, say, 30 in here, it will not only do something which I rather like for the sky, but it's now really had a heavy effect on my face. And I do not want that effect in this case, so I'm going to leave that alone. You know, some more work and masking, you could probably, make 2 images and layer them and get your sky, but I wouldn't go to that much work for a picture like this. And then that's pretty much it. So when I open this image, it's going to look just like what we're seeing here. That's our finished image. You can zoom in, and it looks like I had a little sunburn there. You can see we've got subtlety in the background. We haven't lost anything. It looks pretty natural. The jacket's kind of blue. We could warm it up some more. The iterative process, I'm going to close this out. Now, if you want to iterate this process, what you would do is, let's open it up again. And let's say, well, gee, let's just make it a lot warmer because that jacket's looking blue. So I'll crank the white balance up to 60-50. Now everything looks much warmer. The desert playa looks much more neutral. But is this right? This is early morning. The light was very blue. I think it looks too warm. But maybe you like that look. But maybe you want to go, let's say 56-50. Maybe, is that better than what I had before? Perhaps. This all gets into subjective judgment calls. But what I like about being in this dialogue is you can play with these things and then undo, or there's undo 56-50. I think the 56-50 looks too warm. 53-50 might be a little cool. So maybe we'll try 54-50. Undo. Yeah, so maybe 54-50 is looking pretty good, but if you're like me, I get picky. So early morning light is bluish, and at 54-50, the playa is not looking blue anymore. It's looking, pretty neutral, and that doesn't look like things really look to me when I'm there. So I let it stay a little more blue at 53-50. So that's the type of process I go through to tweak an image, and you just have to develop some experience with that to decide what you like. But just as a reminder, always pick your profile first and get yourself in the ballpark of what you want, because the way these profiles work is all these other controls are going to need to come after that first initial choice. All right, so when you're done, you can click done if you don't want to open it right then, or click open.